Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Trade Station Masterclass. My name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education for Trade Station Securities. And I'm glad to be here in this session to talk a little bit about strategy trading, specifically how to generate orders using a trend line. So there are some things that are built into TradeStation that we can use right out of the box. And there are other custom strategies that we are going to use today as an example. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's go through some of the disclosures. Keep in mind that every symbol and idea that I talk about is for educational purposes. Active trading is not suitable for everyone, and past historical performance is no guarantee of future results. If anybody's looking for additional information on these disclosures, you can go to www.tradestation.com/important-information. All right, welcome everyone. Let's go ahead and switch over to the TradeStation platform, and let's talk about strategy trading in terms of a trend line, I'm saying. So we're going to take a look at the strategy that is here on TradeStation, and then we're going to take a look at a custom strategies and see what the differences are. But before I do so, let's look at some of the essentials of trend line, how to draw them, and how to use them. First of all, we draw, and this is probably, basic information that you already know, but it's always good to review, and it's just going to set the tone for our presentation. So trend lines is a common way of determining the trend of the market. When you draw a trend line, of course, is pointing upward or it's pointing downward, and pretty much identifies the trend. Uptrends are drawn from support, and downtrends are drawn from resistance, meaning that if the prices are going up, you want to make sure that you use the low prices of the bars to draw that trend line, meaning support. But if the price is going down, you want to draw the trend line using the highs of the bars because it's going to be used as a form of resistance. They can be drawn on any bar interval and over any historical time frame. So these strategies that we're going to talk about today can be used on any time frame. If you're a long-term trader, if you're a short-term trader, if you're a day trader, whatever the case may be, these strategies can adapt. And trend lines should touch at least two key support levels or two key resistance levels. Whenever there's a trend line that touches multiple points, of course, it becomes a stronger trend line. So that's the reason why that last bullet point says that trend line should at least touch two key points on the chart. Once they're drawn, the longer the trend line becomes and the more times it is touched, the more significant the reversal is once it is broken. Trend lines are dynamic and they need to be redrawn from time to time. And the trend line values can be used as prices for placing orders. They extend right and provide values for the next real-time bar. And this is something really interesting and something that the strategy will use. So on the current bar, where the strategy is doing all its calculations, the strategy can look forward one place and look at the value of the trend line in the future. Because it has a trend line and the trend line extends into the future, it knows the values of every single bar into the future. Something really interesting, and you can build strategies that look at that price into the future based on that trend line. The strategy components that we're going to talk about today are these right here. These are basically the custom strategy that I'm going to share with you here. So the custom trend line strategy looks for a specific trader, hand-drawn trend line by the assigned trend line ID number. If that doesn't make sense, I'll show you how to do it, because you do have to supply the strategy, the trend line ID, and I'll show you how to get that. Trade size is determined as an input that's in the custom strategy. But when you automate trend line strategies, there's a few things that you have to be aware of. And again, yes, we're going to walk through the different elements of automating this strategy. First of all, it is recommended that you test these strategies using the trading simulator to confirm that the expected behavior is what you're looking for. You don't want to have any surprises on a real account if it's not exactly the type of order entries you're looking for. Under automation, enable the checkbox for generate strategy orders for display in the Trade Manager Strategy Orders tab to verify order generation before execution, something that I'm going to show you as well. We need to enable adopt a real world position if a position is already open. I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. And track and verify your strategy orders and positions in the Trade Manager, Strategy Orders, and Strategy Positions tab. That is something that I'm going to show you here as well. Some of the signals that you can use as examples, this is something that you can use in any of the strategies that are either part of the TradeStation platform or the ones that I'm going to supply you. You can tweak them so that you can have the behavior you're looking for. So the first behavior is a trendline bounce, meaning that you're using it to go in the same direction of the trend and use it just as a bouncing signal from that trend line. If it's upward, you're looking for buy signals when the price touches that line. And when it's on a downward slope, you're looking to generate short signals when it touches that line. So that's pretty much what the trend line bounce would mean. You can also use a retracement trend line break, meaning that if the price moves from one side of the trend line to the other side, you're going to use that as a signal to go in that direction. If the breakout happens upward, then it's a bullish signal. And if the breakout happens downward, it's a bearish signal. Or you can use a trend line as a trailing stop. We're going to look at an example today using the trend line as a trailing stop. And it works as a trailing stop because just think about it. If you have an upward sloping trend line, every value that is on that trend line going forward is going to be higher. So if the prices are above the trend line and you set that trend line as a stop, every bar is going to have a new value that moves with the bar. So it's a pretty interesting concept. You're not using an offset. You're just using the trend line slope to determine what the future prices are going to be. So it acts as a trailing stop. We're going to take a look at that as well. I'm just going to show you what's built into the TradeStation platform in terms of the trend line and how to format it and utilize it. So let me go here to studies and add strategy. We're going to go to the ones that are built in. So let me go ahead and scroll down to the T's for trend line. Oh, yeah, there's two. Okay, there's one long entry and one short entry. So we don't have exit strategies per se. However, some of these can be changed to just act as an exit. So let me show you what I mean by that. Let me go ahead and add these two strategies. I'm going to add both strategies so we have a strategy that interacts with a long entry and a short entry. Let me go ahead and put those in. All right. And what I'm going to do is draw a trend line. So you need to, these are strategies that, as you can tell, when you add them to the chart, they don't show any signals. So you don't see any arrows for long entries or short entries. I am unable to go to data. I mean, I can bring up the strategy performance report, but you can see that there are no trades generated. So the strategy by itself, it's not going to generate any trades because it needs a trend line to do that. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to draw a trend line and then we're going to turn on, well, the strategy is already turned on. We're going to refresh the chart so we can see signals appearing on the chart. One thing that you have to keep in mind, though, is that this strategy that is built into the TradeStation platform is looking for trend line crossovers. So if you draw the trend line, let me draw it here, drawing trend line. And if you draw the trend line, let me go ahead and go here to drawing and turn off snap mode. Actually, no, let me turn on snap mode. Let's see what happens. Snap mode is a functionality in the drawing menu that allows you to attach the trend line to specific prices or specific price points on the candlestick. Remember that the candlestick is made up of the open, high, low, and close. And snapping allows you to attach the trend line to one of those prices. It increases the precision in drawing the trend line whenever you're clicking on a low and you want to, you want that trend line to fall exactly on the low. If I were to draw this trend line here, I'm just gonna see what the behavior would be. I have snap mode on, so I'm gonna take this low right here. So I'm gonna click somewhere closer to there. It didn't quite hit that low, but I can adjust it later. And I'm gonna come here to the low of this bar. All right, so let me adjust this anchor point. Anytime that you draw a trend line and it doesn't go where you expect it to go, you can always, adjust it. Let me go ahead and increase the bar spacing here. I'm going to drag this anchor point and put it on the low where I wanted it to be. So that's my trend line. It's touching this low right here and this low over here. Still, I don't have any trades generated. However, by the way, if you didn't know this, Control R on your keyboard reloads the chart and it recalculates any indicators or strategies that are already on it. So I'm going to press Control R, and still the strategy is not generating any trades for the reason that I explained earlier, that this strategy is designed to look at price crossovers. And if you attach that trend line to exactly the low of each bar that you're drawing it on, it's not really a breakout. It's touching it, but it's not breaking it. So in order for me to have a trend line that generates orders, I have to have breakouts. I have to have crossovers. So I can maybe draw the trend line. Let me go ahead and remove this one. Let me bring back my chart, and I'm going to draw the trend line. Again, I have snap mode on. Click on trend line over here, and I'm going to go from this high over to this high. There's a couple things that I see. I see a breakout right here in the middle, which is going to generate a trade. I can either turn on the strategy or refresh the chart to see what this would look like. I don't think it's going to be a good trade because remember that the strategy is bullish on a cross upward and it's bearish on a cross downward. So you can see that this barely crossed over to the other side and then just came down. So I'm sure that that trade is going to be a losing trade because the strategy is designed to go long when it breaks the trend line from the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that trend line again. I'm going to drag one of its anchor points, which is the bigger boxes. When you click on a trend line, you're going to see these white boxes appear on the trend line. How do you identify the anchor points? They're going to be a tad bit larger than the others. So I'm going to click on this anchor point, and I'm going to attach it right here at the high of this bar. That way, it doesn't generate a trade there, but it will generate a trade down here. So notice that we drew a trend line, grabbing the peaks of this downtrend, and we're expecting the strategy to generate a trade over here when it crossed the upside. It'll do other things. For example, over here, we have a crossover to the bottom side. So we'll see a little bit of a back and forth between the strategy, which is okay, but I just want to show you what the strategy is designed to do. Let me go ahead and do Control R on the chart one more time. Oh, we still don't have any trades because I forgot to do something. This is something that I mentioned earlier and I forgot to do it, which is telling the strategy what trend line am I using to generate the orders. The example that I did just a moment ago, where we had that upward moving trend line, may not have been a great example because I didn't tie the strategy to the trend line. However, we'll test it with this touch right here. Let me go ahead and zoom in just to make sure that that's touching and not crossing. What's the price right here? Yeah, I don't think that's the high of that bar. So it's touching, but not crossing. Let me go ahead and zoom out one more time. And let's go ahead. The way that you identify or the way that you get the ID is by clicking on the line and holding on the trend line. You can see that the trend line number is at the top of this data tips window. This is trend line number 0. As you draw trend lines on the chart, it will automatically add a trend line number to it. So the strategy needs to link to that trend line number 0 in order to generate the orders. How do we do that? I'm going to go to Studies, Edit Strategies. Here are the two strategies that I added. I'm going to customize the long entry. And here it is. This is a TLREF, which is a trend line reference. And we just need to change this one to 0 because that's the ID of the trend line. So this is a direct link from the strategy to that trend line that we hand drew. Let's go ahead and click on the short entry, customize. And again, we're going to turn that 1 into a 0. Let's go ahead and click OK. And then click on close. What we thought was not going to happen on this touch actually happened. You can see that as soon as it touched the line, because what it does, the type of order that is sent by these strategies are stop orders. So as soon as the price of your stop is touched, it'll just activate a market order. And that's exactly what happened here. It touches the trend line, which is the price of that stop order, and it just buys. Wasn't a good trade. You can see that it didn't do anything else until it crossed to the upside. And this short entry that we see here did not happen exactly on the upward breakout. Let me show you what happened there. Let me go ahead and zoom in. And what happened here, take a look. So this explains why we have a short entry here instead of a long entry. The reason for it is because it did break out to the upper side. You can see that there's a clear breakout to the upside, but then a couple days later, we had a break to the downside. That is what triggered the short entry. So we were in a short entry already when this happened. We just need to understand how the strategy is interacting with that trend line and how the orders are being generated. Now, let me go ahead and do something. Let me go ahead and zoom out. So what I'm going to do is probably move that trend line somewhere here. Let's see if I move it here, right through the middle of that downward trend. And I'm just going to do a Control R again. Remember that the strategy doesn't recalculate automatically. We have to do that ourselves. So we do that by Control R. And you can see that the strategy recalculates. And now we can look at, how the strategy is generating trades for these breakouts. Let's go ahead and take a look at some trades. Let me come here at the very beginning. You can see that the price activity touched the line, and we have a long entry right there. It wasn't until it crossed to the bottom side that it went short. So the strategy is doing exactly that. Going long when it breaks to the upper side, goes short when it breaks to the downside. Of course, you can, test this and look at the strategy performance report, and let me go to data and look at strategy performance report. And this is how our equity curve line looks, and our report generates the trades, but it doesn't have a lot of flexibility. Of course, you can use the inverse here. So for example, on a downward trend, maybe you don't want to use the long entries. Maybe you just want to capitalize on the short entries. One thing that I can do here is make the long entry exit the short. So what I'm going to do here is go to studies and click on edit strategies. I can take the long entry, which is LE, and you can see that on the buy column, which is turned on, I can click on the little drop down and use the long entry condition as exit only, meaning that in this downward trend, when it breaks the trend line to the downside, it's going to go short. But if it breaks to the upper side, it's going to just exit. It will not go long. Let's see how that looks. I'm going to click on close. And here you go. You can see that the long entry on this upward breakout didn't generate. It's only looking for the downward breakouts and is using, the upper breakouts as an exit. Of course, that didn't really make my strategy any better. I'm just trying to explain to you how the strategy interacts with this particular chart. If I go to the data menu and go to the strategy performance report, even though this is sort of a profitable strategy, it's not really complete. There's a total of 6 trades. If I wanted to, test this concept and use multiple areas of the chart, I can do so. What I can do now is this. I can go to drawing, trend line. Let's suppose that I'm going to draw a trend line right here. This is on snap mode. If you want to have some more flexibility as to where to draw the trend line, make sure that you turn off that snap mode functionality, and it'll allow you, to stretch that trend line to any, part you want. Now, this is, if I click on this trend line and I hold my mouse pointer, this is trend line number 1. So you can see that the first trend line was trend line number 0. The second one is trend line number 1. And you can see how it automatically adds the trend line numbers to it. So let's take a look. What I need to do now, since I have those two strategies already linked to my trend line number 0, what I can do is add the strategies again so that I can link the second set to this second trend line. I'm going to go to studies, add strategies, and then click on trend line LE and trend line SE one more time. Let me show you this. The default value of that trend line is 1. That's why it automatically generated the orders for me. I'm not sure if you guys remember, but let me go here to the strategy. Notice how the input values are already set to 1. That's the default value. So if your strategy is already number 1, it'll automatically generate the trades for you. So let's go ahead and click on close. But before I hit on close, on this upward trend line, which is trend line number 1, I want to use the long entry breakouts for entering long, but I want to use the short entry for exiting only. Then I click on close, and there we go. Now on this downward sloping trend line, we are turning on the short entry, and on this upward trending strategy, we're turning on the long entry. Of course, if we go to data and click on strategy performance report, that, it's a profitable strategy. But of course, it's very simple for me to look at an uptrend after it's happened and then draw the trend line, right? Anybody can do that and turn a strategy into a profitable strategy. But if your outlook is for a particular market to go in a certain direction, maybe turning a trend line on and having a strategy that, triggers signals up and down would be very interesting to test. If I wanted to maybe turn this on for real time, let's see how it would look. Drawing, trend line. I don't know. Let's draw a trend line this way. All right. If I turn the strategy on, let me go ahead and add strategies one more time. Add strategies. I'm going to select those two strategies one more time, but this time I'm going to set those strategies to trend line number 3. So studies, edit strategies. So these bottom ones, I'm going to double click and set them to number 2, not number 3. I didn't confirm the number, but I'm pretty sure it's number 2. We'll check the number in just a moment. Set that to 2. Okay, so we have a set of strategies on 0, a set of strategies on 1, and a set of strategies on 2. All right, so that's on this strategy. If I were to turn the strategy automation on, let's see what happens. One thing that I have here at the bottom, if you guys are asking what this at the bottom, this is just the trade manager stretched out at the bottom of my platform so that I can see the most recent order generated. This is clicked on the strategy orders because I want to see my strategy orders as they're generated in real time. Let's go here to studies and edit strategies. Let's generate here, check the box for automation. If you're not familiar with automation, I do another session that talks a little bit about what is strategy automation and how to turn it on. So this allows me to see the order that's being generated right here at the bottom. I'm going to click OK. And here we go. You can see that at the bottom, there's 2 orders generated for Microsoft, which is the symbol that I have here on the screen. These orders are unsent to real execution. They're active as a strategy order, but they haven't been unsent to the real market. These are 2 orders buy and buy to cover. If I were to move this chart to the left, we have one trend line here, but there's another trend line, pushing upward that is also an active trend line, which can generate orders at any time. But here we have the short entries every time that it crosses the downside, and anytime we cross to the upside, we have a buy to cover. And we have those 2 orders already here in place. Now take a look at the long side. It appears as if it's generated, but we turned it into an exit. So even though it shows here as a buy, it's just going to close out your order. Why do we have a buy to cover? Because we are, or the strategy is, in a long trade currently. You can see that the last trade generated was a short entry. Let me increase the bar spacing here so that it's easier to see. See, right here, that's the last trade generated, a short entry, and that's the reason why we have a buy to cover. Now, where does this 367.75 come from? Is using the calculations of that line instead. Let me go ahead and click here. Now, if I bring my cursor on this bar where this trend line intersects, take a look at the price. What's the price there on the right-hand side? 367.71, which matches, this 367.75 on the order. So the strategy is being calculated on the current bar and is grabbing the price of that trend line right there at the very top. If I don't want this trend line to interfere with what's happening here, I must remove it or remove the strategies associated with it. So let me go ahead and go and do that instead. Let me go to studies, edit strategies, select the strategies that are on trend line number 1, which is that one we drew the second time, and just click on status. That is going to turn that piece of the strategy off. And I may want to turn the first one off as well. It was only done there for back testing. I'm focused on the last trend line that I drew. Let me go ahead and click on close. The strategy now recalculates. I don't have any pending orders. Orders are generated on the close of the bar, but I was expecting a trade to be generated here. Let's go ahead and turn this into a 1-minute chart. I know that I need to draw the trend line one more time, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and draw the trend line. Let's draw it right here. Let me go to studies. This is trend line number 3, I'm guessing. Yeah, trend line number 3. Go to studies, edit strategies, turn this into trend line number 3. Close, and there we go. Now we see the order generated. I'm not really sure why it wasn't generated before, but you can see that this is a buy to cover. So we went short on this breakout on the downside, and now we have a buy to cover at 336.07. Where is the 336.07 coming from? On the current bar, but the value of that trend line. So if on the current bar, my price would break out on that trend line, that would be my exit signal. All right, so those are the things that you can do with the built-in strategy. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the strategy that I'm sharing with everyone here. It's a zip folder. The link just downloads a zip folder, but if you open up the zip folder, you'll find the ELD document in there. I'm not sure if you noticed, but it canceled the strategy order and generated another one because I have a new bar, and every single bar is going to generate that calculation. Let me go ahead and remove this. Open up my chart a little bit more. Let me go ahead and go to edit strategies. I'm going to clean my chart of all those strategies that I added. And I'm going to use the strategy that I sent you. The strategy that I sent you, it's a little bit more flexible because it does other things that this built-in strategy doesn't do. I'm going to go to studies, add strategy. The ones that are custom are going to begin with with the at sign, at symbol, at MC for masterclass. And they're right here, at MC trend line. Let me go ahead and do, let me go and look at a different market. Okay, let's use this right here. Let's suppose that we have this upward moving trend line. I'm going to draw trend line, and I'm going to draw it from here to here. Okay. Then I'm going to go to studies, add strategies, and I'm going to add the long entry strategy and the long exit. Let me show you how these work. I'm going to click on OK. And I need to edit the strategy with a trend line number. This is trend line number 4, as you can see right there on the top of the data tips window. So studies, edit strategies, and I have to format the strategy to change it to number 4. And close. Let me show you what this strategy is doing. Let me go to edit strategies. I'm going to select the long entry and go to the easy language of that strategy, because this explains why I'm not seeing any orders. Do you guys see this line number 33? If trade size is greater than 0, which it is, we have 100, and you have a valid trend line ID, which we do because we put in number 0 for the trend line, and last bar on chart, then begin. So what you're going to get is this strategy that calculates only on the last bar on chart. So it's not a strategy designed to give you historical entries. It's designed to start from that point forward and generating orders. Does that make sense? Because it's important that we remember that. Because if we add these custom strategies to our chart, we need to know why the order or why the strategy is not generating any orders. It's because it's set to calculate on the last bar on the chart. So how does it work? Well, you come over here on the trend line, all right? And if I were to turn the strategy on for automation, that's when I see something happening. Let me go ahead and generate strategy orders for display, and I'm going to click OK. That's where I see the information happening. What this does is that if the closing price is below the trend line, it's a buying transaction, but as a stop. So right now, let me open up this chart a little bit more. Right now, the price is under that trend line, and the value of the trend line is 416, 18, or 17, which matches, the price right here, 416, 18. So on the current bar, we're looking at the value of the trend line, and that's our buy stop. So if the market were to touch that, we are in a buying transaction. If the price were to be above the trend line, notice what happens. Let me do something different here. I want to take this trend line and move it somewhere else. Let's move it here. And I'll drag this trend line over here and move it this way. Let's say that we're looking at the prices this way. Let me open this up. Let's go to the top side. Okay. If we are above the trend line, notice how the prices are above the trend line. This will generate a limit order at that trend line. We can sit here and see how the strategy generates orders. In fact, we can try that right now. So this is SPY. Let me go ahead and close all my positions up here. I've set my control F12 to do that, so that it clears everything out. Okay. And I'm going to turn on the strategy for execution, edit strategies, and automate execution without confirmation. So let me bring this up a little bit, and I'm going to turn order filled. Okay. We just got filled. This is a strategy generating trades. As soon as we have crossovers, remember, it's designed to generate long entries, depending on which side of the trend line the closing price is. If you're above the trend line, it'll be a buy limit, and it'll just think that it's going to touch the line and bounce back up. But if you're below the trend line, then it's going to touch the line and it's a limit order, so it'll buy thinking that the price will go up. One thing that I wanted to tell you before I let you go, because this strategy can also be used as a trailing stop, and I mentioned that while we were on the PowerPoint, and I want to show you how to set that up. Okay, let's say, for example, that let me change my symbol here to VZ. All right, this is our chart of Verizon. Let's suppose that we are in a long position for Verizon. Let me go ahead and trade 1,000 shares at market. Let's buy them.
Order filled.
Okay, so let me turn on account orders and positions right here on my chart so we can see the order. All right, that's our trade right there. Everybody sees our trade. Let's suppose that we want to use a trend line to set a stop. You can just set the trend line yourself based on historical prices. Here, since we're only testing this, let me draw the trend line in this direction. I want the stop to be or go in my favor, so I'm going to do it upward. So I'm going to go to studies or drawing, trend line, and let's do it this way. Okay. So we have an upward moving trend line. Now this is interesting because as the values of that trend line go up, you're going to get a more favorable selling transaction for this long entry that we have here. But what we can do is automate the trend line strategy so that it generates a stop on that trend. How do we do that? Let me go here to studies. I don't have strategies here yet. I'm going to go to studies, add strategy. I'm going to use just the at MC long exit. I have a long position. This is a long exit because I need to know what trend line number this is. This is trend line number 2. Now I'm going to go to studies, edit strategies, turn this to trend line number 2. And one thing that I do need to turn on, and this is something that you have to remember when you have an open position, is to go to properties for all, go to the automation section. We need the strategy to look at our real-time trade, to look at our account and see if we have any shares of this security, which we do. We have 1,000 shares of Verizon, and we want to adopt the real world position for the current account. So this is the checkbox that is really important when we want to automate a strategy for a position that we entered manually. Adopt the real world position for the current account. Once we turn that on, we can generate the automation similar to what we did earlier. I'm going to turn confirmations off and I'm going to click on close. So right now, if you can tell, I have my closing transaction active, which is the strategy status, is unsent because of the price. It's looking for a price of $34.92. Now, where did it get that price from? Right here, the trend line. I wanted to show you this so that you can set these type of strategies to also help you in executing exits on your already established positions. Let's just wait another 30 seconds.
Order filled.
Oh, it just failed me at 30. See, take a look. It may not have changed the stop price, but it did, fill me at 34.93 because we had the price touch the trend line, and you see that it happened automatically. Of course, I didn't set the quantity properly. That's one of the things that was my mistake. So it only exited 100 shares of my 1,000. Now, if I hover over my Verizon position, you can see that I'm long 900. So that's one of the things that I didn't do on this strategy pretty well. Okay. So that's my class for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions about any of the strategies that I submitted, please send them to education@tradestation.com, and I'll be glad to provide you, pointers on how to use them. Thank you everyone for joining me today. Have a wonderful afternoon, and I hope to see you in a future class right here at TradeStation. Goodbye, everyone.